Hello, in this video I'm going to show you YouTestMe system for online examination, certification, proctoring and training. Currently we're in the login page and I'm going to enter the application as an administrator because that is the user that can access all of the functionalities within the system. Once I enter the application, I'm navigated to the home page where I can see the panels that I have chosen to display in the home page. For example, as an administrator, I want ease of access to system settings, and I want an overview of the number of users within the system. However, feel free to customize the home page any way you see fit from the variety of widgets available. If we take a look at the right side of the screen, we're going to see my recent activity, but I can also see that information in the notifications panel where I can see most relevant information for this user at this particular time. Now, if we take a look at the left side of the screen, I'm going to be able to see the main menu, and I'm going to walk you through the options in main menu so you can have an overview of what is the purpose of YouTestMe application. Let's start from the top. First of all, we're going to see the assignments option, which has my tests, my surveys, and my training courses beneath. These are the options that students are going to be using the most. In these panels, they're going to be able to see their tests, their surveys, and their training courses, and easily start them from there. Now, the next option we see is the users option. We can use this option to import users, to organize them into user groups, to assign users different security roles which define levels of access, and to access our profile naturally. Now, organizing users into user groups can come in handy. However, if you want to organize all of the application according to different departments or units that you have, maybe you want to explore the workspaces option. This option allows you to bundle the users, tests, training courses, surveys, and many other entities within the system to be available only for a certain department in your system. That department can have their own colors, their logos, and all other options associated with that particular part of your organization. This means that users from different departments won't be able to see the user groups in that department, tests from that department, training courses, surveys, and other options if you don't want them to see that. You can always have a global department as well, global workspace, which allows you to create global exams which everyone can access. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The next option that we see here is the tests option, and this is the core of the application. So over here, you can organize the questions you have into question pools. Now you can use those questions to generate, and question pools to generate exams, meaning tests, using the new tests option. Once you have created the tests, you can manage them and decide who can take the test and when. You can attach certificates you designed in the application to different tests, and you can apply different grading scales to the tests. You can use question categories for more sophisticated tagging and organizing of your questions. Now, let's say that you have created hundreds of tests and you want to organize users so they can take them at a particular time. Testing centers option can come in handy, simply because in this option you can manage testing sessions, candidates, booking, and testing locations all at one place. This means that you can create a testing session for multiple tests that needs to be taken at a particular location, and certain authorizations need to happen for all of the candidates that have been associated and attached to these testing sessions. Typically, you would create a testing session and associate it with a testing location and say that 30 candidates can take the test at that time. Candidates can then book their seat at that particular session, and what you can do, you can authorize them to take the test at that particular time. Now, Surveys are the next option in the main menu, and I won't go into detail here because, as you can see, many of these options actually exist in the tests menu. However, the only difference between surveys and tests is simply that after the test, you can see if somebody passed or failed. After the survey, you don't have that option. You can maybe associate them with categories if you like. You can see the number of points that they achieved on a particular scale. However, there's no pass-fail criteria, no passing mark. Now, the next option that we can see in the main menu is the training courses option. This option allows you to organize the learning experience of your users into a step-by-step process, and you can choose to attach tests to each of the steps in your training courses, meaning that students need to go through certain materials, multimedia, and then do an exam, and then after they have passed the exam, they can proceed to the next step. The next option is the reporting option, where you can build your own reports using the report builder. You can use one of the 60 predefined reports that we offer. You can label favorite reports to access them easily, and you can schedule reports to be sent to an email of your choice or the location of your choice at particular intervals. We also have the subscribers feature, which allows you to attach different emails to a different user, meaning that each time this user passes an exam or fails the exam, this information is going to be sent to these emails. Finally, we have the systems section where you can customize the look and feel of the application, change the colors, change the logo, change the notifications in the system. You can also handle the integrations with other existing platforms that you use, and you can access system maintenance panels to see the system performances, the load on the system, and all of the similar settings. In this walkthrough, I'm not going to cover all of the options that I showed to you in the main menu. I'm going to focus on the core scenario of creating a test, assigning it to users, doing a test as a student, examining reports, and afterwards dabbling with the system settings a little bit. So let's start from there. First of all, we want to create question pools. We want to create questions and question pools. So who can do that? So naturally, we need users that are going to create these questions and question pools. So a precondition for this is to have users in the system. Before we dive into question pools, then we'll start with the user profiles section. Over here, we are presented with all of the users in the system, and we can create new users. Now, there are several ways to do that, and the most common way is to create a new user by simply importing necessary information. You can also generate registration links, which will allow you to send them to the students and immediately associate them to a particular user group. In the system settings, you can allow self-registration, or you can require for admin to approve or decline registration requests. Now, if we go back to the list of all users, you're going to see the option to load users as well. This allows you to basically use the Excel template we created, very easy to follow, to upload several hundreds of users at once. Different users prefer a different way of importing other users in the system, so it all depends on your scenario. However, each user needs to be associated with a particular security role. So let's explain these security roles real quick. If we go here, we can see that we have many security roles associated with the system and that can be attached to other users. So let's, for example, explore the student security role. If we click to edit this option and scroll down, we can see the list of all of the permissions which define what this particular user with this security role can see in the system. Now, users can typically only log in, change their personal information, change their password, access their pools, their groups, their certificates, and naturally do the tests. And also they can require special accommodation if that is necessary. Administrator, for example, would have all of the options selected. But if you find a certain role called question pool manager, we can see, for example, that this particular user can, if we scroll down, only access the question pools page, create a question pool, and basically their whole purpose in the system is to create questions in the system. They cannot access anything else. Now, before we explain how this particular security role would create actually questions in the system, let's briefly touch on the user groups topic. So the first thing we see is the list of all user groups, but I prefer this view where I can see the hierarchical structure of these groups. So we have an example of some company, demo company, and we have several subgroups within this organization. So we have finance, sales, IT, customer service, and all of that. So if we click on one of these user groups, we're going to be able to see its members, we're going to see its managers, and we can also see the score chart, where over here we can see the average score of our group members on different exams. We can also select a member and add it to this graphical representation and see their score compared with the average of the group. We can choose to see line chart or bar chart. We won't go into detail here. However, this is only one of the embedded reports throughout the system. There are many of them with graphical representations or tabular representations that can be exported as an Excel file. But I wanted to give you a glimpse of most important reports being associated with the particular module of the application, in this case, user groups. Now let's move on to another topic. Now that we have users within the system, we can start doing some activities. First of all, we can access the question pools page. I'm going to enter it as an administrator, but typically this is the page that will be handled by question pool managers. And over here I can see that we have a very similar structure to user groups. So this is a hierarchical structure of question pools that we can see here. So this means that questions can be organized in this folder-like hierarchical structure, which allows you to basically divide your questions into different topics and divide these topics accordingly. This is useful because down the road, when you're generating exams, you can simply say, I want this number of questions for mental health, this many questions from climate change, this many from artificial intelligence. I mean, these topics are not connected, but I'm just giving you an example. In any case, you're going to get a result for the total exam, but also the result on each of these topics, which is very useful for you as a test manager, but also for students to see the areas in which they need to improve in order to pass the exam in case they failed. So now let's select one of these question pools, astronomy, for example, and we're going to be able to see some basic information about it. We can see its description. We can see the users that can manage this particular question pool. We can see some statistics, meaning the number of questions in this question pool, how many of them are easy, medium, hard, how many question types do we have in this question pool. And if we go back to the questions panel, which is the main panel here, we can see all of the questions within this particular question pool. So we can see that there's 36 of them. And if we click the preview option, we're going to be able to see the exact question from the student's perspective. So for example, if we click this question, we can see that this is a true-false question type. It has a simple statement that is true or false, and students get a certain number of points if they answer correctly. Now, YouTestMe supports several question types, so we support single choice questions, which have only one correct option and several of them offered. We support multiple choice questions where more than one option can be correct. We support essay questions where you need to elaborate on your response. We support ordering questions where you drag and drop the elements in the correct order. Fill in the blanks option question has several blank spaces that you need to fill out by typing in the answer or selecting the answers from the drop-down menu. True false questions we just explained. Basically, you have only two options, true or false. Matching questions have several elements on the left and on the right side of the screen. You need to connect them. Matrix questions have one statement that needs to be evaluated on 3 or 4 different scales that are typically a Likert scale. We also have open-ended questions which have a predefined response, but you need to type it in and the system is going to match the response you typed in with the predefined correct answer. We have hotspot questions where you need to select a correct area of an image. Now, all of these question types can support images, video, audio attached to questions, but also to answers. Editing questions is pretty easy. So if we click to select to create a question, we simply type in the text. Let's say humans are mammals, and then we say true or false. We can select how many points does this question carries. Is it easy, medium, or hard? How long does it last? So let's say 2 minutes to answer this question. Does it carry any penalty? So let's say if you answer incorrectly, you get 2 points deducted. And you also have advanced settings. If we click on show more settings, we're going to see that we can, if we scroll down, set up some advanced options like branching, for example, to display a hidden question behind the correct or incorrect answer or both. We can select a frequency factor saying that this question is very important and needs to appear in all versions of all exams that include this question pool. We can set up the difficulty, as I said, as easy, medium, or hard. So there is a lot of options here. You can create these different question properties, fully custom, that you can then associate with a question as well, allowing you better reporting after that. You can attach attachment to a question, meaning that you can associate, let's say, a specific PDF or an image or something like that that is presented only with this question, let's say, as some kind of resource that can be explored while answering this question only. You can translate it to another language, which is very useful. Why is this so popular? Simply because when you're adding translations, you simply select a language that you want to translate this to, French for example, and then you would paste the French version here. I just did that, and what happens is that based on students' preference, this question will be displayed in the language they prefer. So if you translated your questions into, let's say, English, French, German, Spanish, and you have users from all 4 countries, and what will happen, or countries where these languages are spoken, basically what would happen is that you have a single question and then you have single exam, and users actually choose how they want to see this particular question and a particular exam. So French-speaking users would select French in their profile, and immediately, if there is a French version of this question, it would be displayed in that way. This is useful because you don't have to create 4 different question pools for 4 different languages and then have 4 different exams for this associated with these different question pools in different languages. It eases the management significantly. So let's save this, and now we have the French translation. Okay, there are some advanced options like adding assistances. You can add a hint to an exam, to a question, or allow students additional time to answer that particular question. So let's add this one to a question pool. We click the Add to Pool button and question is now saved. Here it is. Humans are mammals. We can preview it. If we go down here, we can see that these are the settings that we have created. Okay, so now we have our questions and we can start creating exams. However, before we do that, I want to show you the option to generate questions using AI. This is a very popular new feature with the rise of the artificial intelligence. It seems natural to implement something like this. And this is going to save you hundreds of hours of creating questions. Now, you can select, let's say, single choice questions and say a certain topic. Let's say astronomy, because this is astronomy question pool, and we can say I want to generate 5 questions. What will happen is that the AI will automatically generate 5 questions on this topic for you. And then you can simply review them and say if they're good enough. The AI is going to create a question. It's going to create all of the options, correct and incorrect ones. So you don't have to worry about thinking about all of these options, creating these questions. Basically, the AI gives you a great foundation for that, and then you can simply approve them or improve them. And you can always add new questions on different topics. The next stage of this development is going to be for you to upload a, let's say, PDF file and allow artificial intelligence to create questions using that PDF that you created. Once we hit the generate option, what's going to happen is that system is going to let us know that questions are being generated, and we're going to receive a notification when they're in this question pool. Okay, now is the time to go to the option to create a new test now that we have our questions in the system. And the first thing that we're going to see is the test creation wizard. As you can see, with many options in the system, this is the option that this is the process, a step-by-step process where the system basically leads you through everything. So the first step is pretty simple. We just give a name to the exam. Let's call it walkthrough exam. And then we can optionally add a description if we want. We can choose if we want to create tests with or without sections. This means that basically you will have several tests bundled into one test. Each section has its own rules, its own timer. Basically, they have their own questions, all of that. However, they are graded separately, but also all together, and they're bundled, so they need to be taken in one sitting. You can even have a test logo and naturally test instructions, acknowledgement message basically for these instructions, and test attachments, which is very important to know because you can associate a PDF or something like that that can be opened during the exam, which allows students basically to access only the materials that you let them access during the exam. Now, we recommend categorizing your exams as well, your tests. So basically, you need to select a test category if you want, and this will help you better organize your tests and bundle together tests with similar characteristics, and they're maybe covering similar topics. Okay, so let's hide the advanced settings and go to the next step. We're going to create a simple exam without sections for demonstrational purposes. Over here we are in the second step. This is the test settings step. And over here we basically set up the configuration of this test. So we can set up a duration. We can say we want this test to last for 1 hour. You can also set up time per question or time per section, or have allow unlimited time for the exam. You can choose if you want to display all questions on one page or one question per page, which is something we recommend, especially if you have a lot of questions. You can choose when do you want to show the report, meaning immediately after grading, immediately after students finish the test, immediately after results are verified, on manager's approval, where you're basically releasing all of the results at once, or if you want real-time grading during the test itself. You can choose what you want to display in the report, score only, or score and details. We will explain this later, but score only basically means that they will see how many points did they get and if they passed or failed. Details allow you to see results broken down by question pools, but also if you choose, you can show them the actual questions that they had, correct and incorrect answers, and the answers they selected. Now, as I said previously, you can associate different entities within the system, like question pools, like user groups and tests, to workspaces, meaning that, for example, if you have a department in your organization or a unit in your organization that needs to have different user groups, different question pools, different tests, you can, while creating these exams, simply associate this particular test with that workspace, meaning that it won't be available in other workspaces. It is intended only for that particular workspace. Now, one important feature that I want to mention is proctoring. We will cover this in more detail after the student has completed the exam, but basically what we have here is an option to use the artificial intelligence to monitor the suspicious behavior that occurs during exam using the student's web camera, student's microphone, and screen sharing option. This mechanism uses facial recognition and many other tools to help identify cheating and also to prevent cheating. On top of automated proctoring, you can have live proctoring as an option, where the artificial intelligence is actually helping a human proctor to remotely monitor these students in real time. Usually one proctor can monitor around 8 students at a time, and basically this means that they can act immediately and suspend the exam for a particular student if they notice any suspicious behavior. Another option that I want to mention is record and review, which allows you to basically use proctors after the examination to examine the video recording with all of the suspicious behaviors flagged and to determine if somebody should pass or fail based on whether they're cheated or not. Keep in mind that people tend not to cheat when they know that they're recorded and that somebody can go over this recording afterwards. Okay, let's see some advanced settings right now. So if we scroll down, we can see that you can, for example, choose what you want to display before the exam. So you can display how long is the exam, the instructions, the passing mark, number of questions. You can choose not to display this information if you want, but also you can choose if you want to allow students to pause the test and continue when they feel like it. This is typically done for practice exams. And you can also allow test retaking where you can limit the number of retakes. So for example, you can say, okay, 3 retakes and there needs to be, let's say, 10 days in between each test attempt. You can say that retaking is available only if somebody failed the exam. So many options here. I won't go through all of them, but I'm just mentioning some of the more popular ones. If we scroll down, we can see that you can allow students to say, okay, I don't know this response. You can enable answer feedback, meaning that if a question has several answers and each answer has a feedback associated with it, this particular feedback will pop up after the student has submitted the question. You can choose to show the number of points and penalty associated with the question to the candidate. You can choose to enable notes, meaning that students can take notes during the exam, and you can choose to make them persistent, meaning that they are saved and you can examine them also with the student after the exam. Now, you can also require from students to answer all questions, which means that they cannot skip them. You can say that they cannot go backwards in the test, and you can disable the option for them to deselect the answer. So if they select an answer, they cannot change their mind. There are many other options, like for security related. You can enable browser lockdown, which will display everything in full screen mode, and basically the student cannot cut, copy, paste anything. If they click somewhere outside of the exam or close the full screen mode, basically their attempt will be terminated. Now, you can choose to automatically log out candidate after they finish the exam if you want that. You can configure report lifespan, say that, for example, they can see the report only for 5 minutes after the exam if you want to share extensive detail in it, and then you don't want them to access it afterwards. And you can require updating profile information if you want basically students to update information like their address, for example, or last name, stuff like that. Now, this is also an important feature, network access. So you can say that students can take the exam only in the internal network, which you define in the system settings. But basically, this is an IP range where exam can be opened. If you want to allow students to take the exams only in your facilities, this is the option you would use. So basically they can access their profile, they can maybe access some practice exams from home, but official exams can be taken only within your organization and inside of your IP range. So these were the settings of an exam. As you can see, you can combine them into the exact option that you need. And if you're often using that option, you can, at the end of this, save this as a test template that you can simply reuse and upload, which will immediately populate all of these fields according to your security standards and preferences. So let's hit the next option here, and we'll see that in this step we have to choose how do we want to create this exam. We have two options. One is to pick and choose the exact questions that we want. Basically, all of the students will get the same version of the exam with the same questions that you can perhaps randomize, but they get the same, let's say 20 or 30 or 50 questions. More popular option and more frequently used is the option to let the system generate these tests based on the criteria that you specify. We have this basic option, question difficulty, or more advanced option to generate exams based on question categories which are fully created by you. We will use the option by question difficulty and simply specify how many easy, medium, and hard questions do we want from particular question pools, and the system will then generate a brand new version for all users, for each user that starts the exam based on that criteria. Let's see how that looks. Basically, what we would do, we would select the option to add a question pool. Now, I need to select a question pool that I want to use. I selected question management pool, and now I want to add questions in it. So basically, I will say, from this question pool, I'm going to add 5 easy questions, 2 medium questions, and 1 hard question. So now I added 8 questions in this particular exam, and now I can select another question pool. So the next one I selected is digital marketing, and I can add, let's say, more questions here. Let's say 10 easy, 20 medium, and 3 hard questions. So I added, let's say, 2 hard questions. So I added 32 more questions. Save this. Now I have a total of 40 questions, as you can see, 40 questions added. Now, I can repeat this as many times as I want, and I can also see the advanced settings, but we won't go into detail about advanced settings right now. I'm going to hit the next button, and keep in mind that you can include 5, 10, 20, how many question pools you want, but the main point is here. Basically, you set up how many points do these questions carry, and if they carry any penalty associated with them. So let's say if you incorrectly answer the hard question, you'll get 1 point deducted, and medium questions and easy questions don't have that. This is the option we recommend, to generate test versions dynamically. This means that the system will create a new test version each time a new user starts the test. And it will be based on the criteria that we selected, that we want that many easy, medium, and hard questions from those specific question pools. Now, I also want to mention that this option, practice tests, if you enable it, it allows that for students to actually select how many questions do they want from a specific question pool. This means that you can create these practice exams where students basically build their own exams, and they're used to, let's say, help them cover some topics that they are struggling with or they failed previously. So they can basically create a exam covering these topics with, let's say, some practice test questions from that particular question pool. So you don't want to mix the official questions in your examination with these practice question pools. But this way you allow students certain autonomy where they can operate without you. So you don't have to create these practice tests for them. They can do it themselves. Now, this is very useful because a student to generate test versions dynamically, students will never get the same version basically. Even if a single student retakes the exam, you can make sure that a brand new version is generated based on the criteria that you selected. The more questions you have in your question pools, the better this mechanism works. So let's say we wanted 32 questions from that question pool previously. And if you have, let's say, 320 questions there or 3,000 questions, this will significantly help with the prospect of students having the questions that they had before appear in their new version of the exam. So the more questions you have, the better. But let's hit the next option here. Now over here, we would set up the passing mark for the exam. Let's say 51% to pass the exam. You can also have different criteria as well. So if you have sections, you can say, okay, you need to achieve more than 51% on the entire test, but you also need to have 71% or 91% on a crucial section of the exam. If we scroll down, we can also say that the proctoring report needs to be positive, meaning that students that were cheating actually cannot pass the exam even if they get 100%. Now, you can also set up a passing mark for different question pools. So let's say management needs to be 51, digital marketing needs to be 71. And this way students can also see which sections or question pools of the exam did they fail or passed. So let's go to the next one, and over here we attach a certificate to an exam. Now you can create a certificate using a certificate designer. You can upload the background, the logo, all of that. You can choose what is displayed, but we'll select one of the certificates that was previously created, let's say a certificate of completion. And if we scroll down, we can hit the preview option and see how the certificate will look. So over here we have our logo, our background. Many fields are populated automatically, like first name, last name, the score, when was the certificate issued, how long before it expires, and all of that. And basically this is awarded to all of the students that pass the exam. Each certificate has a unique ID as well. So let's go to the next step. Over here, we simply review the settings that we have created. And what's going to happen next is we are going to simply save the exam and finish the wizard. We can also save all of these settings as a template, which will help us in creating similar exams. So let's finish the wizard right now. And what will happen is we're going to be navigated to the page for managing tests. Over here, we're going to set up first testing sessions, determining who can take the test and when, and we're going to publish a test. So let's do that right away. We can do that by clicking the option create testing session, which we're going to do, but we can also click on the testing sessions panel and then select new testing session. Now, once we do that, we are presented with a dialog which is going to let us to determine who can take the test, when, and how. So let's go through all of these settings so you can have an idea of what are the options offered when determining this type of information. So the session can be called walkthrough session, for example, and let's say it's available tomorrow, August the 2nd. from, let's say, I would say 3 p.m. In any case, while you're setting this up, you need to be aware of the time zone that you're setting up as well. So over here we have Central European time, but depending on your time zone, you need to set it up yourself. This is going to pull the system time zone as well, so if you set it up properly, it's automatically going to be reflected here. And let's say it's available until, let's say, 3:30. So everybody who starts the exam from 3 to 3:30 is going to be able to attempt it, and they're going to have full 3 hours that we specified in the exam. And we can set up the instructions for this particular session, which are different from the exam instructions, which you can also set up, and that is something we went through already. The difference is that perhaps you want to leave some instructions regarding this particular session. Maybe it has something specific that is not related to other sessions that you're going to create. Exam instructions are always the same for the exam, regardless of the session, but over here you may want to share some information with the students that may be valuable to them for this particular time. Now, you have the two options here. You can assign candidates manually, or you can allow self-enrollment. This depends on your preference and how you're actually performing the examinations. The reason is that assigning candidates manually gives you full control over who will take the test, and allowing self-enrollment allows basically candidates to choose and book a seat during a particular session, which is more popular with clients that have many sessions throughout the year for many tests. So basically you would just let the students and candidates do the work instead of you assigning them to different sessions. Now you have a lot of options here that you can think about. For example, you can choose anyone in the system to enroll into this particular session, but you can also aim at a particular user group and say that everybody from, let's say, HR departments needs to take this exam and can take this exam and self-enroll. Now, in a scenario where you don't want your students to actually log into the application at all, you can consider using these generated links. So for example, you can generate a URL for direct test access. If you share this link with the students, they will be able to start the exam immediately. They will fully skip the logging moment and selecting the test, clicking on the start button. Basically, they are navigated directly to the exam. Now, also, something you can consider is requiring authorization to enroll into a test. This means that students need to give some kind of proof that they are qualified to take the exam. This is a whole module in the application to approve these qualifications, meaning that basically you authorize students to proceed to the exam. In integration related scenarios through our API, you can also send authorization from another system, which will automatically let students take the exam in YouTestMe. Now let's open the booking settings. Over here you can set up how many students can actually attempt the exam in this particular session. So let's say that this session is being proctored and one proctor can monitor up to, let's say, 8 students. You would limit this session to 8 students. You can say that a booking deadline needs to happen by 1st of August, let's say by the end of the day, and also cancellation deadline needs to happen by, let's say, 2 p.m. because the exam starts at 3 p.m. Now, this comes in handy when you are when you have a lot of sessions and you want to book them in advance. This allows you basically to have an overview of who is going to be attending a particular session and when, and the cancellation deadline is usually associated with refunds, meaning that after the cancellation deadline, if they do not appear to the exam, they won't receive any refund. Now let's talk a little bit about these options for the proctoring. Over here you would choose if you want to have a proctored exam, if you want to proctor your exam using the AI, where you have a couple of options. You have full AI-based proctoring, and you have live proctoring, where basically you have a human proctor that is monitoring the exam. You can also proctor using conferencing tools. Now this means that basically you can connect the application to WebEx, for example, or Zoom or Google Meet, and then everybody needs to join to their meeting before they are actually allowed to start the exam. You can also lock the testing session, so you can set up a password for it, and basically students won't be able to access it before they provide the password for the session. Now location settings can come in handy if you want to, let's say, generate reports afterwards based on the location. So for example, you can say that this is going to be a session for people in Chicago, and then you can compare the performance of students from Chicago with students from Los Angeles, which can come in handy. And you can also set up a session room in case you're doing testing in testing centers of some kind, but this is typically not the case because you want to do the tests remotely, giving full flexibility to your candidates. That's the way of the world. Now additional settings like the external ID can be included here, and you can populate them if you, for example, want to map this testing session with something outside of YouTestMe, and you also have the external name and data source if you imported a session from another system. So let's hit the save button, and now we have our first session, which is upcoming. So students are going to be able to start the test tomorrow. Now in this walkthrough, the next thing that we're going to show is actually doing the exam. We're not going to do this exam because we just generated it for an example. I'm going to log into the application as a student. So I'm going to log out from the administrator's account and show you how it actually looks from student's perspective to access the application and take the exam. So now we're going to enter the application as a student. And the first thing that we're going to see is the My Tests page. As I said previously at the beginning of this walkthrough, students' main option in the main menu is the assignments option. Over there, they can access their tests, their surveys, or their training courses. Depending on your scenario, you probably want to navigate them to the My Tests page or My Training Courses, depending on what's the starting point for their user journey. But initially, they're navigated to home page, so you can choose where you want them to land once they enter the application. So over here, we can see a dashboard with all of the tests assigned to the student. In most of the scenarios, they're going to have only a few of the exams, but in this scenario, they have a whole catalog of exams that they can choose from, and basically they can select what certification they want to achieve, considering they passed the exam naturally. They can also use different filters. So for example, they can find the tests that are available or completed or pending. So let's see the completed ones over here. This particular student has 5 completed exams and they can access their personal report. But in our scenario, we just want to see the ones that are available to them, the ones that they can take. So I'm looking for one exam in particular, and let's try it out. So I'm going to find it by entering cyber as a keyword, and this is the one I'm looking for, cybersecurity exam with all question types, because I want to demonstrate different question types available in YouTestMe GetCertified. So I'm going to click the start option, and I get a instructions dialog which typically contains some instructions This one doesn't, but I'm going to click the start button and see what happens. So I'm presented with the test taking process. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to see all 10 question types supported by our application, and I can see that I have 1 hour and 30 minutes to complete this exam. So let's take a look at the elements we see here. So we see the question, and we see the option to go to the next question. We see the option to finish the exam. We see the progress bar and the all question summary box with 10 questions. And we can see the review list. So I can say, for example, that I want to flag this question for review, and it's going to appear in the review list, and I can remove it from here as well. Now, this is a hotspot question. So basically, I need to choose a correct area in the image to get the number of points associated with this question. I'm going to select this response here, so step number 5, and hit the next question button. Now, immediately you can see that the progress bar is updated, that the question summary box is updated as well, and I'm presented with a single choice question. Now, this one has multiple options, but only one of them can be selected, and one of them is correct. So let's select this one randomly, and I also have an option to select that I want to skip this question to avoid negative points. But in this case, I'm not going to select this one. So hit the next one. And now I'm presented with the fill in the blanks question type. Over here, I have 3 blank spaces with predefined options. You can also create fill in the blanks question type where you're not offering any options, but basically you want to choose one of the options here, and you get the and the system is automatically going to calculate the compare your responses with the correct ones. So let's hit the next question button, and now we have the multiple choice question, very similar to single choice question. However, you can select more than one correct answer, and I'm going to select these 2. Now I can also leave notes, so I can create note basically and say something like document my thought process, like I wasn't sure about this one, but it made sense intuitively. And I can save this, and now I have this note, and I can always take a look at it. This is why students don't have to have pen and paper while they're doing the exam. They can take notes in the system itself. Now let's hit the next question button, and over here we have a matrix question. We have one statement with several items that we need to evaluate on a Likert scale. So basically we choose these options from 1 to 5, it can be from 1 to 7, 1 to 9, whatever you want. But this is a very popular question type where you have to evaluate a single statement on multiple levels. Now, this is the open-ended question where we have to type in the correct response, and the system is automatically going to match the response that we typed in with the one that was predefined by the question creator. So let's go to the next one. This is an essay question type, and basically you would elaborate on your answer here. And this is a question type that needs to be graded automatically currently. However, we are building an AI-based mechanism that is going to be able to mark these questions automatically and grade them for you. The system is going to work in such a way that you basically grade some responses, and the AI is able to learn from that, and you're able to train it based on your evaluations how to evaluate these types of questions in the future. So let's say, for example, you need to grade around 50 questions, 50 responses to this question before an AI can actually be trained to mark it instead of you. For now, I'm going to say I won't answer this question to avoid negative points, and let's hit the next question button. Now we have a true-false question type, which we saw previously. Basically, we select only one of these two options. And now we have ordering question type. So we drag and drop the elements that we see into a correct order. Pretty straightforward. And let's go to the last one. This is a matching question type. So we drag and drop the elements from the left side of the screen and connect them with the ones on the right side of the screen. And after we are done, we can go back to any of these questions to check them once again before we submit the exam. Once we are sure that everything is good, we can finish the test and click confirm that. What's going to happen is that we are going to be presented with our personal report. Now, it's your choice what happens at this stage, basically. So you need to predefine that as a test manager. In this example here, the personal report is displayed immediately. However, you have options to display this report after you have reviewed the test attempt or after you have graded it. You have the option to release the results at a particular date to everyone from this session, which means that, let's say, everybody was doing the exam, but you want to grade all, let's say, 30 test attempts before you release all of the results. And you also define what you want to show in the report. So if we go to the questions tab, we're going to see all of the correct and incorrect answers that we have selected, and we're going to basically see all of the answers. So over here we can see that this is a lot of information, a lot of feedback to the client, to the student. Typically, you don't want to share this for official exams, maybe only for practice exams. So you can restrict this from the personal report and withhold this information from the students. Now, if we select aggregated report, we can see the score on the different areas of this particular exam. So the passing mark was 60, and I performed very poorly on this exam, so I failed all 6 of these topics. However, this is very useful when you want to identify the topics in which you need to improve in. So let's say that you passed 3 of them and failed 2 of them. You would need which 2 areas you need to study more in order to pass the exam. And this is typically most valuable piece of information in the personal report for the students that failed the exam. You can also see the notes associated with questions. And that's basically it. Now, if a student passes the exam, they can export the certificate, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate to you next. So let's go to the My Tests page right now, go back to the dashboard, and I'm going to see the completed exams, and I'm going to see the one that I passed. So for example, let's take a look at this English demo test. I'm going to hit the personal report button, and I'm presented with the personal report. However, over here I passed the exam, I achieved 90%, and I can export a certificate. I can export it as a PDF, as an image, or I can share it as a link, paste it somewhere on my, let's say, social networks. But let's export it as a PDF. Click on it, and I can see the certificate that I achieved with the date that was issued, with the unique ID, with my score, with my name, first name, last name, and all of this information that you included when creating the certificate. Okay, so this was how you would approach exams. Let's take a look how we would approach training courses. So I'm going to go to the page with my training courses, and it's very similar to the page with my tests. The only difference is that these are actually training courses. As you can see, we can see the steps, we can see how many tests are associated with these training courses, we can see the progress, and I'm going to continue this one, banking training course. So I'm immediately navigated to this training course. I'm going to walk you through a couple of these steps so you have an idea of how this actually works. So let's see what we have here. Basically what we have on the left side of the screen are the steps of this training course. And training courses are there to create exactly that step-by-step learning experience for the students. Now, Over here we have 5 steps. We're currently back to step number 2. I can proceed to the next step only once I have taken and passed the exam associated with a previous step. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First of all, let me explain the elements we see on the screen. So we see the steps that we are going to take in this training course on the left side of the screen. Central content is a description of this step. You can share any information you want here, like an image, text, something like that. But most important information that you want to share with the students is the attachments associated with this step of this training course. So you can have an image, you can have a link to an external resource, you can have a video. This is a link to a YouTube video, so students can play them here. You can upload other attachments like PDFs, audio files, video files, and stuff like that. Now, I already passed this exam, but once I have examined all of the attachments, typically what I want to do is to take an exam that's going to be associated with the information shared in this step, and once I have passed it, I can proceed to the next step. So let's simulate that. I'm going to retake this exam. I'm going to acknowledge the instructions and hit the start button. And I'm presented with a couple of questions. This is a short quiz, which is going to allow me to validate my knowledge, to check my knowledge on the topics that were covered in this particular step of a training course. So these are simple single choice questions. I'm going to finish the test now, and what happens is that if I go back now here and go back to this step, I can see that I have passed this exam with a score of 100%, and I can proceed to the next step of a training course. And over here I have a couple of paragraphs associated with this step, and I also have a PDF that I can go through. I can download it as well, and over here you can include everything that can be exported as a PDF. It can be a Word file, it can be a PPT presentation. Now also you have the link to something else as well. So for example, a link to a World Bank, and we don't have a test associated with this step. So it's not mandatory to have a test associated with each step. We can proceed immediately to the next one. And over here we can see we have an audio file that we can play or also download. And we have an image. This is a step related to cryptocurrencies, and we also have a YouTube video, but we can also have a video that we simply uploaded in the system. And at the end, typically what you're going to have is a certification exam. You only have that, you don't have any attachments. You have simple instructions on how to start this exam, and you hit the start button, you acknowledge these instructions, also confirm the start button, and what happens is you'll go through the certification exam, and hopefully you pass the exam. So I'm going to scroll through these. This is a fill in the blanks question type. We have ordering question type. Then we have true false question type. And lastly, we have a single choice question type. And once I finish the test, let's see what happens. I'm navigated back to the training course, and I can see that I passed the exam. I can go to the personal report, and I'm going to see the score that I achieved. I achieved 100 points, and I can export a certificate as a PDF or as an image. So this is typically the last step with this certification exam, and this validates that I went through the training course and successfully completed it. So I can go back to the training course and hit the complete training option. Now you also have the option to disallow students to complete training, but you as an administrator can go in, see somebody went through all of the steps, completed the examination at the end, got their certificate, and then you can complete training for them. Now, this was a typical scenario for tests and training courses from students' perspective. There are some other things to consider. For example, when you are starting a training course for the first time or the exam, maybe you want to put a price on it for the students, and in that case they need to go through the payment process. Also, you have an option to limit the number of retakes. You have the option to limit the number of seats in a particular session. So they need to go through the booking process before that, but I just demonstrated assuming that they have already booked the exam or paid for the training course or for the exam, what happens once they've gone through these preliminary steps and they actually access the content that you created for them. Now we're going to go back to the administrator's account, so you can see the reports that you can generate after the students have completed the exams and training courses. So I'm going to log out and I'm going to access the application again as an administrator. So let's click the login option for the administrator and we are navigated back to the home page. Now we're going to access the training courses module and we're going to hit the training courses option. And we're navigated to the training courses from the administrator's perspective. We're going to find one training course that we saw previously. I'm going to go to the candidates panel. Now we can see the basic information about it, but what we want to do, we're going to go to the candidates panel where I'm going to show you how you can easily track the progress of your students. Very straightforward. You can see who completed the course, you can see who is still taking the course, you can see the exact step and the progress, where they are in the process, and it's all pretty straightforward. And that's the main report for the training courses, because there you probably want to take a look at the steps where your students are currently. Now, if we go to the option to manage tests, we're going to end up on the page with the list of all tests that we are managing. I'm going to find a specific one. It's called Report Builder Test. Once I click on it, I'm presented with its overview and I'm presented with options to choose the report that I want to see. The first report that I definitely should take a look at is the summary report. Now, why is that? It gives me an overview of the exam as a whole. So I see the total number of candidates that attempted it. I see how many started. I see how many finished. See how many passed. See how many failed. I can see the average score, I can see the highest score, I can see the lowest score, standard deviation, all of that. I can see the pass-fail ratio, so here's the graphical representation of the pass-fail ratio, and I can see the distribution of scores across this test. So this is very similar to a normal distribution, or it has a tendency to go in that direction. But if I scroll down, I can also see some interesting statistics by testing session or by testing location. So let's take a look at this table here. What I can see here is, for example, that the average score in Montreal was 49%, but average score in Detroit was 68%. Now, all of these tabular reports can be exported as an Excel file, and you can sort it using these columns and all of that. So I can easily see now that there's almost a 20 points difference between these two groups of students from Montreal and Detroit. And this gives me very useful information, and I can make data-driven decisions to see why is this going on. Is the let's say schedule in Detroit better? Are the trainers there better? So why are students in Detroit performing better than students in Montreal in this example? And I can also filter by date, so I can see the average scores using a specific data range, and this gives you a lot of opportunity to generate useful statistics. So you have an overview of the exam, and if you want to go into detail for each candidate specifically, you can go to the candidates panel, and over here you're going to see the list of all candidates that are assigned to this test, so all 35 in this example. You can use the score, for example, to sort this table, and what you'll get is the score of a student with the highest score, and then it's sorted descending. But if we click on this option, we can see the personal report for this or any other student. So basically we're going to see things similar to the personal report that the student sees. We can see their score, we can see the passing score, we can see the time spent in the exam, we can see when they have attempted the exam, all of that. We can also see the aggregated report, so we can see their score on each section. This particular student did very well in sections 1 and 2, but did a little bit worse on section 3 and had only 33% on section 4 of this exam. And we can see the exact questions and their details for each section, and we can see where they performed poorly and if they need to improve in any specific area. Now, while we are on the subject on question analysis, you can also see the statistics for each question individually, not only for each student individually. But we'll get to that in a minute. Before I do that, let's go to the report builder. Now, once you go to the report builder option, what's going to happen is you're going to be presented with a large list of columns that you can use to generate reports of your own. Typically, you want to select only the data that you want to see in the report, naturally, and you can save that, as I saved, for example, pass-fail status, combination of columns, where I only want to see username, first name, last name. I want to see the score and if the user passed or failed. So if I click on the option to display this report, I'm presented with exactly those columns. So username, first name, last name. I can see the testing session, I can see the score, and if the user passed or failed. I can export this as an Excel file, naturally, as all tabular reports. But if I want to go further, I can go back to the report builder, scroll down, and also apply some filters. So I can say, okay, I want to see everybody with these columns, but I want to see only the users that failed. So passed equals no. And if I scroll up and display report again, now I have a shorter list of students that only failed, so passed equals no. And it's the same report, but I filtered it out so I get the exact data that I want to see. So these are some of the basic reports that I wanted to share with you. So definitely want to see the summary report with basic information about the exam as a whole. You can see the details about each candidate on the candidates panel, and you can build your own reports using the report builder. However, there are other useful reports. So let's go to the list of all tests again, and I'm going to find another one. And the one I want to find now is this one. So I'm gonna click on this particular one, and I'm going to go to the questions panel now. So not candidates, not report builder, not summary report. I'm going to go to the questions panel. Over here, I can see the list of all questions in this exam, and I can see the success ratio. So over here, I can sort using the success ratio, and I can say, okay, this particular question is the hardest one here, so only 63% of students answered it correctly. And I see that there are some questions which are pretty easy, so 94% of students answered this one correctly. In general, this is a very easy exam, I would say, because the hardest question was successfully answered by 63% of the students. And I can also choose other statistics to generate a report, so I can see average time to answer. So if I sort this now, I can see that, for example, this particular question required 1 minute and 16 seconds on average for students to provide a response. And if I sort it in another direction, I can see that this particular question required 30 seconds less. So it's pretty easy. And if this question, for example, has the lowest average time for answering, and it also has a very high success ratio, it's something I can consider removing from the exam, because it's not really discriminatory in a way that it doesn't discriminate between the students that actually know this topic or doesn't know this topic, meaning that it's not useful in this exam at all. So everybody knows the answer, and it doesn't differentiate between the students in any way. And the last report I want to show to you is the one. So let me find it. Here it is. So this one, if we go to the monitoring panel this time, and if we take a look at this particular student, Emily, we can click on this option here to view the proctor's report. Now, once we click on this option, we're going to be presented with a report that is generated only if AI-based proctoring is enabled. Now, this gives us an opportunity to examine the whole recording that happened while the student was taking the exam. So preconditions for this is for students to connect their web camera, allow the system to record using their web camera, using their microphone, and using the screen sharing option. So what we can examine here is not the entire recording. What we want to focus on are these red parts. So if I click on this red part here, we can that the student is not looking into the camera. They're looking away, and this is definitely a problematic behavior. Okay, so this is the first red flag that we are examining. Let's go to the next green part. And over here we can see student is looking into the camera. Basically, they're in the exam. But if we go to the next red part, we can see that the student is no longer in front of the camera. This is definitely problematic. At this point, you would probably click on the rate option here. Rate this as a negative test attempt, which means that the student will fail the exam even though they, for example, got 100%, simply because you concluded that they're cheated according to this recording. For demonstrational purposes, let's go to the last red part. Okay, so student is in front of the camera, they're looking into the camera, but if we take a look at the screen that they are sharing, we can easily see that they are not actually in the exam. They opened Wikipedia and they're basically searching for some responses. Now at this point you would definitely rate this as a problematic test attempt, and maybe you want to investigate further. So let's click on this user's profile, and what you can also do, you can click on the similar option and see that this particular student actually already attempted some exam in the system under another username, which means that not only that the student cheated on this exam, but they also, or possibly cheated, obviously cheated, since they are Googling for answers, but they also attempted another exam or this exam under another username, but through facial recognition, the software recognized that there is a similar profile and have notified you to, I mean, not notified you, but basically have documented that here so you can investigate it. And you can also generate a PDF report. Let's open it up, where you can see the conclusion of the credibility generated by the AI for this exam. You can see the legend here, which clearly shows the events that happened and in which minute, so you can easily identify the same things basically that you saw in the recording there, but you have it here as a PDF. So C2 event and B1 event happened throughout this test attempt, and C1 is C2 is face is not visible in front of the camera, and B1 is focus was changed to a different window that was when Wikipedia was opened. So definitely this is not a test attempt which is a valid test attempt. To be completely honest, this happens rarely, simply because people tend not to cheat when they know that everything is recorded and somebody is going to go over that. Now, this is a automated proctoring, meaning that AI did all the work. However, there is another way of proctoring. And to demonstrate that, I opened a video that's going to show you how you can monitor as a proctor using the help of AI multiple students at once. So I'm going to pause this right now and walk you through what I'm looking at. Basically, I see 5 people doing the exam during this session. I can see their web camera recording. I can see their screen in real time. These green marks are helping me through the power of AI to know that everything is fine, no suspicious behaviors like background noise or looking away from the camera or another person in front of the camera is registered. And this is done on top of the AI proctoring. So basically you as a human proctor can do live proctoring or you can use YouTestMe proctors to make sure that everything is in order. And basically what is happening is that AI is helping you monitor multiple students at once, and you can react immediately. So if you see cheating, you can terminate their test attempt at once. So these are two main types of proctoring. One is automated proctoring, where you have record and review option. Everything is recorded and you as a proctor review it afterwards. And also you have this option where you're doing live proctoring and you're basically as a proctor monitoring the test attempt in real time and acting in real time. Now, our professional proctors are equipped with manuals and instructions to act appropriately in every situation, and that can be adjusted according to clients' rules as well. So let's go back to the administrator's homepage, and I want to show you the last thing related to reporting, and that's the option for predefined reports. Now, tests and training courses are only one part of the YouTestMe application. You can see the question pools, you can see questions, surveys, user groups, user reports, all of that. So there are a lot of predefined reports completely unrelated to the tests. So for example, you can see the user audit trail to see the activity of every user in the system. So we can basically see the things that I've done during this presentation. For example, I can see that I displayed the report for the test report builder. So everything is logged. So this is the moment where the student continued the training course during this presentation. This is the moment when the student finished a quiz or certification exam at the end of the training course. So everything I demonstrated is logged here, and you can always revisit it. You can see exactly which user did what in the system, and there are many other reports if we go back similar to this one that give you very useful statistics. You can see the last login activity, you can see logins and logouts, all of that. So let's see, for example, test results. This particular report has all of the results sorted by test finished. So it has all of the results of all of the students that attempted the exams in the system. So you can easily filter it using the test name or username and generate, let's say, the report for one student that did the exams in the system. You can generate for one exam for all of the students. You can see easily who passed, who failed. All of that is supported. But these reports are created based on the, let's say, most useful information that is used, and they're generated so you can easily access the exact information you want. You can always add a report to as a favorite report and easily access it as your favorites, and you can go to the option to schedule a report, where you can simply say, okay, for example, the report that I just showed you, test results, if I edit this, I can see that I want this report to be sent every 2 days to the emails of my choice, and with this email message. So basically students, not students, but let's say administrators, managers, people that need to be notified of the results don't even have to go into the application. The system is automatically going to send them reports, and they're going to be able to receive them to their email without even logging into the application at all. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is the system settings. Now, if we go to the settings and customization page here, Uh, the option that I want to show you, since we mentioned emails, is the option to change the content on every email that is sent within the system. So when the account is activated, for example, you can edit that notification and you can see exactly what is going to be sent to the by the system. You can include specific variables, for example, to send some generic content. Like, for example, when this account is activated, you may want to send username or password for that student or that user. Or you maybe want to send a link to the profile directly. So basically, if you include this variable, they're going to have a link which is going to lead them to their profile without them needing to log into the system. So a lot of options here. You can leave any message you want, and you can do that for every message or email in the system. And you can completely remove any reference to YouTestMe. They can basically so this variable from can be changed in such a way that it says your company name or your organization name, and students are not going to be aware that they are in a system built by us. And the way to hide that as well is to go to the theme and language and go to the logo and favicon option, remove all references related to YouTestMe, use your logo, use your favicon, and if you go to the white labeling option here, you can use your privacy policy, you can use your welcoming message, you can as I said, define who are emails sent from. You can change the web browser tab. Everything is fully customizable. And if we go to the theme option, you can apply different color schemes to the system, and it's going to reflect your colors of your organization. In the language settings and language bundle, you can also completely change the wording used and terminology used in the system. So if you're calling your tests exams, you can change that completely. If you're calling, let's say, assignments or my tests, my assessments or something like that, you can change that. So every label that you see in the system can be modified, colors can be modified, logo can be modified to reflect exactly what your colors look like in your organization. And this way, for example, if you're connecting with another system, LMS for example, or any other system, the students are not going to notice a transition if they're, for example, starting the exam from your system and navigating to our system to actually do the exam, which is an advanced topic covering the integrations part. This is not going to be the topic for this video, but that's a typical scenario where somebody actually starts the exam from another system, goes through the exam in YouTestMe, and then the student and the results are navigated back to that original system. This is where changing the look and feel of the application comes in handy, because you don't want the students to know that they actually switched the systems during that period, and you simply want to navigate them to the appropriate application at appropriate time, meaning do the exam in YouTestMe and then be navigated back to another system where the whole process was started. So I hope this video walkthrough was helpful. We only scratched the surface here. As you can see, there are a lot of options, a lot of advanced options, a lot of things we didn't cover, but this video's purpose was to give you an overview of the main functionalities of YouTestMe, so you can put these main scenarios into perspective. And if you're interested in more than that, please schedule a call or send us an email. We will be more than happy to explain every scenario, because our system is so flexible and so robust that can support any major scenario related to training, knowledge examination, certification, or proctoring. So it's up to you to decide what works best for you. We can offer you options, we can offer you recommendations, we can offer you the workflow that is going to be it is going to require the least amount of work for you, and you can set it up in such a way that once you set it up once, you don't have much to do except analyzing the reports that are sent to you by the system. That's it for today. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great day, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to work together and partner up, and you'll be able to use YouTestMe as your knowledge examination platform.